We begin today's show in Gaza, where health officials say at least 14 Palestinians have starved to death over the past day, bringing the total to at least 147, including 88 children. Facing growing international pressure, Israel's allowed some additional aid into Gaza, including by airdrops, but the UN said it's still just a, quote, drop in the ocean of what's needed. Israel also said it would pause attacks for periods of the day in parts of Gaza, but the death toll keeps climbing. Earlier today, Israeli forces opened fire at 2 food sites. On Sunday, Israeli forces killed 9 Palestinians and injured 54 who had gathered along an aid convoy route in central Gaza. Earlier today, 2 leading Israeli human rights groups, B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights, issued reports accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. Yuli Novak, the director of B'Tselem, said, quote, "What we see is a clear, intentional attack on civilians in order to destroy a group. I think every human being has to ask himself, what do you do in the face of genocide?" Unquote. On Sunday, Hamas chief Khalil al-Hayya accused Israel of sabotaging ceasefire negotiations.
لا معنى لاستمرار المفاوضات تحت الحصار.
There is no point on continuing negotiations under blockade, extermination, and starvation of our children, women, and people in the Gaza Strip. The immediate, dignified entry of food and medications to our people is the real and serious expression of the viability of continuing negotiations.
This comes as officials in Gaza say more than 40,000 infants under 1 year old are at risk of a slow death due to a catastrophic shortage of baby formula. This is a Palestinian mother of 6.
This child, who is 4 years old, should weigh 10 kilograms, but he currently weighs 7 kilos and 400 grams, the highest level of malnourishment. This other child, Youssef, before the war, he weighed 13 kilos. His weight was excellent despite his illness. 13 kilos for him was great. Now he is 9 kilos. He is a skeleton. He is more malnourished than his brother.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu denies that there is starvation in Gaza.
Israel is presented as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
For more, we go to Deir al-Balah in central Gaza, where we're joined by Eyad Amawi, a representative of the Gaza Relief Committee, a coordinator for local NGOs. You have said the famine is worse than bombardment. Can you describe, Eyad, what's happening on the ground right now?
Thank you for hosting me. Yes. The rapid deterioration and the malnutrition, we now suffering from the acute malnutrition for our children, especially, and elderly people. Look, our indicators is very bad and rapidly decreasing the hope for saving children's life. In June 2025, our statistics indicates that for more than 15% of our children under 5 years old is suffering from acute malnutrition. So this is a rapid deterioration, and we cannot, it's unbearable for us to save their lives, as the mothers before a while mentioned. The baby formula also the main struggle issue here in Gaza for most of our babies under the 2 years old. So in my thoughts, when I mentioned it's more aggressive than the bombardment because it's caused the death rapidly for especially children and elderly people who are suffering from chronic disease and need special nutrition. You can imagine our families here just survive over 1 meal maybe at the day. And most of our adults reduces their portion of the food to feed their children. So the famine is also aggressing more than the bombardments and will cause a huge amount of children rapidly lose their life. The main categories now to save the children. In our statistics, we recorded that more than 5,000 babies suffering from acute malnutrition. This percentage is more than 150% from the previous March.
So Israel says it's implementing humanitarian pauses of bombing in densely populated areas. Yet we have reports on Sunday Israeli forces killed 9 Palestinians, injured 54 who had gathered along an aid convoy route in central Gaza. That's something that has been happening regularly over the past months. Can you explain what's happening on the ground?
Of course. Look, the GHF warehouses I mentioned before is a death trap. Yesterday, the Israeli occupation announced the truce for the humanitarian corridor and some operations for aid distributions. The people there still waiting, crowded thousands and thousands in the cross area and at the GHF warehouses and everywhere in the eastern part of the Gaza Strip. It's cited in the red zone that the Israeli mentioned. This is a truce. When they achieve that region, they randomly shooting people in the Netzarim corridor also, where the people is still waiting there, and cause more than 14 martyrs and more than 50 casualties, most of them seriously injured. So over the ground, nothing tangible changed from after the Israeli announced the ceasefire temporary for aid and distribution of aid. And also, the amount of foods they let come into the Gaza, it's completely will not change the catastrophe here because it's very less, more than our daily needs here.
As we're broadcasting, we've just heard that President Trump, who was asked by journalists at a news conference in Scotland if he agrees with the Israeli government's assessment that there's no starvation in Gaza, Trump replied, not particularly. He said he's seen them on TV and those children look very hungry. The U.S. president added that the U.S. is giving a lot of money to support the aid effort in Gaza. He recently was interviewed and said the U.S. had given $60 million in aid. Where was the thank you, he asked. Eyad Amawi, if you can talk about what's getting out there and your response to President Trump.
Look, Mr. President Trump promises Gazans multiple times, more than 20 times, he needs a peace for Gaza, and he will bring a peace. But in our thoughts as a locals and as NGOs coordinator, Trump's mentioned that multiple times, but nothing tangible happened after each statement from the President Trump. So in our thoughts, it's just statements. But if they need a critical and to stop this genocide, we believe they can do urgently direct interventions and stop the genocide and poses the catastrophe and force the Israeli to let the aids come in freely without Israeli restrictions. And if Mr. Trump's need to know is there a real famine here, please let the international journalists come to the Gaza freely and remove the ban over the journalists from the international community. And those people can reflect also the reality. As NGOs coordinators, I mentioned multiple times, we have no time to wait a new political statements. We're sending more than one human appeal to save our children's life. Gaza completely destroyed. Nothing here exists to stand in these circumstances. Mr. Trump must recognize that from the day, maybe we have no any amount of sweet waters because the full ban for the fuel to come into the Gaza freely caused a suspension for the water desalination station here. So until this moment, nothing could change, just statements in the media. So we hope something will change directly And we sending another human appeal for the international community to do interventions urgently and to open a real humanitarian corridor, not the airdrops. It's not cause any tangible things here.
And so what has been the policy change exactly? I mean, you have the GHF, they shut down all the other aid sites. The UN had an extensive aid sites of, hundreds where they distributed. That was shut down. Now they're allowing in what the UN calls a drop in the ocean. What would it require for you, for people to be fed there? And can you talk about what you think the hopes are of a ceasefire, actually a permanent ceasefire?
That's a great question. Look at the main point after the truce is mentioned from the Israeli side. We need a complete commitment from the Israeli occupation. After that, they let the numbers more than 500 trucks day by day for more than 2 weeks to entering the Gaza freely. After that, we can break the famine and stop this horrible scenes that others can see. And also, if they need to stop this starvation, they can. Look, the GHF warehouses is established at the south part of the Gaza Strip. They pushed most of us in the shrinked area to the coastal area, just 30 square kilometers, and they need to feed us in this shrinked area, and there is no shelters, there is no guarantee shelters also, and there is no available amount of trucks that can feed us freely without maybe facing threats day by day. You cannot imagine when the people is crowded over the trucks and agree, maybe have a lot of aggression between the civilians here. The GHF causes something like fabric collapsation in the society because they force people to walk more than 15 kilometers to obtain some or seek some foods. It's unbearable for the women and children and elderly people and who have a disability to move to day by day to go to the GHF warehouses at Rafah. I know a lot of my peoples went there from the north and from the Gaza town. They walked more than 15 kilometers. It's horrible scenes. They cause for those civilians suffering more and more. This is a collective punishment, really.
Eyad Amawi, I want to thank you very much for being with us, representative of the Gaza Relief Committee, coordinator for local NGOs, speaking to us from Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.